After 35 years in parish work as a Catholic priest, I wanted to marry a woman with a sparkling personality, good moral character, and a desire to be challenged athletically. I had ridden several bike rides of around 500 miles or so, yet my great dream was to tour Tuscany with a wife, not on a commercially supported tour, but solo, just by ourselves. So I got on to Match.com with my profile headlined, "Tuscany, our bikes, a bottle of wine, and thou beside me." After 90 email responses and meeting a few women, I saw Pat's Match.com profile. It was headlined, "Copacetic, athletic woman ready to travel." We began to date, decided to marry, and resolved to bike Tuscany together.
My profile mentioned my athleticism, especially tennis and hiking, including a couple 14ers, but no biking. So I bought a bike and we began 6 months of training to be able to complete a 350-mile loop from Florence to Lucca, Assisi, and back to Florence. We practiced 6 months climbing hills with our panniers filled with bricks and half-gallon water bottles to simulate our luggage, which amounted to about 45 pounds for Dick and 20 pounds for me. Since I had never biked more than a couple of miles, I had great anxiety as we trained, but it ended during the actual tour. Tuscany was the highlight of our second year of marriage. We hope you enjoy some of the happy memories of our grand Italian adventure.
I spent 6 months on the web planning the tour, researching possible routes, towns, hotels, and B&Bs. I simply decided to go where the commercially supported tours went, since they knew the territory much better than I. Knowing that they would charge about $1,000 a day to determine the route, reserve and pay for the lodging and most of our meals, carry our luggage and provide support, we figured we could save at least $12,000 to do it all by ourselves for a 20-day tour. We could also stay in any town as long as we wanted, and choose our lodging and eating places to suit our preferences. So we decided to buy a tandem to make it easier for Pat, but after training on it for a month, we decided instead to take our road bikes, my Greg LeMond and Pat Specialized, which worked out fine. We had no mechanical problems or flat tires. For 2 years before meeting Pat, I had carried on email exchanges with 2 men in London who had biked Tuscany 4 times. Besides their practical advice, they endorsed the route I had decided on, but we learned only by experience that the most important decision I made was to do it in a counterclockwise direction. I'll explain why later.
Except for Pisa and Mugello, the red dots show where we stayed overnight. We planned the tour so that we could spend a couple of days in several towns, enjoying the sights and people, and renewing our stamina for biking to the next town. Other than 2 nights we reserved in advance, all our hotels and B&Bs.
We found overall the tour to be fairly easy. My friends from London had warned, however, that what makes Tuscany so attractive is that some of the delightful towns were usually built at the top of high hills to provide fortification against plundering tribes. So, for a few times, we had to walk our bikes partly uphill. My friends recommended that instead of renting bikes, we take our own, so I got cardboard bike boxes, reinforced them and put a wheel on them so we could roll rather than carry them through airports.
Lufthansa got us to Florence on Friday, September 20th. We had chosen Hotel Aprile, only 2 blocks from the train station, knowing we had to roll our boxes to the hotel. We carried all our luggage in 4 panniers and 2 large handlebar bags. After relaxing a bit at the hotel, we walked to the Arno River, only a few blocks away.
A bottle of wine for lunch back in our hotel room, and then a great dinner at Il Latini. We had to wait outside for 1 hour for second seating, which we enjoyed with 2 interesting travelers from Israel. And of course, we had to have an Italian gelato afterwards. On Saturday, I explored Santa Maria Novella around the corner from the hotel. Pat told me churches were on her short list of things to do in Italy. Florence's cathedral, or Duomo, had such a long line of tourists, we decided not to stand in line to enter. This was my second time in Florence to go through the cathedral without doing so.
One of the things we enjoyed about Tuscany was walking the crowded streets of vendors selling their wares. We went back to the Arno River and spent some time on and around the Ponte Vecchio Bridge and its very expensive jewelry shops. Saturday afternoon, we took a bus up to Fiesole that overlooks Florence, grateful that we had decided not to stay there the first night because we would have had to bike up a killer winding hill. Fiesole provided a marvelous view of Florence in the valley below. We went back to Florence, enjoyed staring at a human mannequin, and saw a replica of the David outside the Uffizi Museum, which we had just visited.
Unfortunately, Lufthansa lost our bikes until Sunday, when I frantically called them to learn that they were in the lost and found. We took a bus back to the airport, picked up our bikes, bussed them back to the hotel, and after 2 hours of assembly, we were finally ready at 1 o'clock to bike out of Florence, or so we thought. We had purchased a GPS system for the tour and knew that our most difficult challenge would be making 32 turns in the many roundabouts and convoluted streets to get out of Florence. I watched the GPS screen and paper printout on my bike while Pat read the names of the streets from the sides of the buildings. After 3 hours of riding, we were lost and frantic about making it to Montecatini that evening, even though it was only 29 miles west of Florence. We were starved because we had left Florence without eating lunch, so miraculously we found a McDonald's and grabbed 2 hamburgers. While I was outside McDonald's, 2 Italian studs about 20 years old rode up on their bikes and asked if they could use our tire pump. Realizing they spoke good English, I said, "We're in a mess. We need to get to Montecatini tonight and are thinking of renting a car so we don't lose our reservation." They said, "Why don't you take a train?" I said, "We don't know where there is a train station." After pumping up their tire, they shouted, "Follow us, and we'll show you." By then it was around 4:30, and wherever we were, the Sunday afternoon traffic was heavy. Pat dislikes very much riding in traffic, but we rode about 20 minutes between oil tankers, tour buses, and carts in the street until I looked over and saw the Arno River. I thought that was a good sign because we needed to be near it, but then I looked again and saw the Ponte Vecchio Bridge. In 20 minutes, after wandering around for 3 hours, we were right back at the train station, 2 blocks from our hotel.
As worried as we were about not getting to Montecatini that night, meeting the 2 Italian angels proved to be a great blessing for the entire tour. It taught us that if we ever had a bike or body failure, we could easily take our bikes on the train for only $5 a bike and ride the train to our next town. And where the GPS had failed us in getting out of Florence, it proved its worth in towns where we had reservations for lodging, because Dick had programmed each hotel or B&B so it would guide us right to the spot. This was most valuable because the locals often didn't have a clue where our hotels and B&Bs were located.